I after I got done, because once again, it was my first time watching either of these movies. So I watched the first one. I got a gist of it. I knew I didn't necessarily need to watch the first one to enjoy the second one. It just kind of enhanced the experience from what I heard. As I got done watching it, without reading that Rotten Tomatoes thing is probably used better words than I would have, but that's kind of what I felt about this movie. I was like, it did a great job of expanding on this world, and it's just like it's just a really really well made movie. I think I can understand why people didn't go to the theaters to see it. It's a shame. I would say that doesn't make or break a movie being good enough for me, but it does for the studios. So unfortunately, that's the case there. But no, I feel like the Rotten Tomatoes little consensus there from the critics is like spot on.
Yeah, I am completely with you on that. I that's very very good wording. It's hard to word it better than that, I guess. But and that's maybe partially why they do what they do. But I will also say that, and maybe this is maybe a good time to really get into it. I'll ask you about the box office quote unquote failure of this movie and having it not make much money. It lost money for the studio, and even making this movie kind of took a long time to kind of get off the ground and actually get made. Felt like a little bit of a gamble. Obviously, there was a very specific strategic way they wanted to market this movie. You can look at it as a results based thing and say, hey, this didn't work because it lost them millions of dollars. And obviously, any plans for a sequel, and maybe I'll get into the sequel part later, but sequel plans aren't really on the horizon in terms of a theatrical experience. And what do you think was the biggest contributor to it not being seen in the movie theater?
I think so. It kind of goes a little bit into why it took me so many attempts to watch it. Now that I finally sat down and watched it, it's something that you really kind of have to dedicate and make time for and get in the mood to watch this movie. This movie is affectionately called by a lot of people that I checked in on who've seen it as slow, and sometimes boring. But I don't think it's boring at all. At least I don't think it's boring. I have really very recently, because of our hobbies that we get ourselves into, I watch a lot of comic book properties, CW TV shows, Marvel Cinematic Universe, DCEU, the new DCU, whatever it's coming. I watch a lot of superhero stuff. But I noticed very recently, I've kind of just been in the mood to sit back and just watch. Not that those aren't films, but you kind of know what I'm saying. Just something not that. Something really artsy. The cinematography is amazing. The acting, it's slower. It allows the actors to perform on levels that you don't often get to see. And I feel like Blade Runner 2049 is the epitome of that. So if you go into this movie thinking, great, I want to see a sci-fi action movie, you're not getting that.
That's
Um,
fair.
and so I think I kept finding myself, I would watch the movie each time I tried to, up until the introduction of Wallace's character played by Jared Leto. That's about 40 minutes in. And every time, for some reason, I would just stop there and end up doing something else and never go back to it. And I think because when I was trying to watch this in 2017, 2018, 2019, I was kind of just wanting that blockbuster Hollywood Avengers Endgame, just exciting action in my face. I didn't want this slow paced story I had to pay attention to, care about the characters, that watch the nuances in the performance, pick up on things that the director is trying to put there for you. It's just a really involved movie that requires your full attention, which it's kind of hard to get that from a lot of people now. If you're going to make a 3 hour movie and it's not the Avengers or Batman, good luck at this point. Like it's going to be really hard to get audiences to want to go spend 3 hours. Of course, unless it's Avatar. We
Right.
don't
Yeah.
talk
Unless
about
it's
that.
James
Yeah,
Cameron.
unless it's
Yeah.
James Cameron. Which is insane because the director, I don't want to butcher his name, Dennis Villeneuve. He's done amazing movies. I've loved everything he's made.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. I just maybe some people thought they had to see this older movie. They didn't want to go back and do the research to learn about the first movie, which obviously, as we both seen it, you don't really need to see the first one. I don't know, man. It just seemed like this movie came out around a time a lot of reboots and sequels. I know, like you had Total Recall around this time. You had the new RoboCop. You had all these, Star Wars was coming back. You have all these reboots. It just kind of got lost in the shuffle of like another one. I think that's my theory. On
Yeah.
why it didn't do as well as it should have.
Do you think and you kind of mentioned how it felt slower paced. Do you think the runtime had some effect on that?
Well, yeah, I think, but like it's weird because I remember when I saw the runtime of like Infinity War. in like Endgame. I was like, yes,
Right?
I wanted
Yeah.
super long. I don't want it to end. But with this, it's this movie doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't beat you over the head. It's just, I think I was watching one scene, in particular, Ryan Gosling's character when he finally meets Harrison Ford, when Deckard and Kay are talking, he says, "I want to ask you a question," and Deckard says, "What?" And Ryan Gosling holds that for about 4 to 5 seconds before he even
Hmm.
says anything, and you just get to watch his facial expressions of him processing how he's going to ask this question because spoilers in this moment he thinks that's his dad. He
Show
thinks,
don't tell, right? The classic
yeah,
show don't tell. Yes.
exactly. And not that I'm saying this is a highbrow movie for like, only like the finest of cinema lovers, but there is something to be said about when you see these movies that are just kind of like this, aren't doing that great, then you'll put something up where, you know, Thor Love and Thunder, which is a movie I didn't particularly think that was great, but I think more people would have probably went and saw this movie because of it's Thor and it's Marvel and it's the names and it's, I don't know if Blade Runner unfortunately was a huge name in 2017, except from a few hardcore cult following fans from the 80s,
Right.
because even the first movie wasn't that big of a success box office wise.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that's really well put, and I do think like you said, a lot of times we are kind of conditioned as moviegoers, and this movie even kind of is a critique on that as well. Of like we a lot of people would rather go see a movie that's popcorn fun entertainment most of the time, right? That's maybe more uplifting or whatnot. Like you said, you almost have to get into a sort of certain mood to kind of watch this kind of movie because it's not for the faint of heart. There's some dark things that happen in this movie too.
Yeah,
I would say to me, I mean, maybe I'm biased because I like these kinds of movies, but I do feel like I wasn't bored at all watching this movie.
yeah,
Everything had a purpose, everything had a reason. And I love the filmmaking aspect of it. How you have this incredible, I would say, a top 5 movie director of our era, maybe top 3 of our
yeah,
era, right? I mean,
definitely.
Arrival, amazing movie. Sicario, really good movie, right?
Yeah,
Dune,
little known
you know,
enemy with starring Jake Gyllenhaal or Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he made Prisoner too. I believe.
right? Yeah, I think
Like,
you're right.
yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, so
Like,
he's done some really good stuff.
yeah,
You got some really good star power in this movie. It's just, I think this is what 5 years ago now that we're coming on where this movie came out, at least.
6
Um,
now, right? It's 2023.
yeah.
Yes, 6. Yeah,
So I mean, nowadays these kind of properties, this kind of an adaptation, I feel like would probably, I mean, look at what Disney's doing with like Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? They're doing a lot more like limited series stuff, right? And
yep,
even other streaming platforms. This kind of a movie would either have to be shorter and on lower budget, or if it is this kind of budget, it's going to be a series, you know?
yeah,
And, that's just the way, and because they're probably scared, this is probably part of the reason why, you
yeah.
know?
Hopefully, movies. Speaking of Dune, I didn't see Dune in theaters. I watched Dune at home on my television, but I know that Dune was widely received and loved. Like, hopefully that kind of encourages the studios to come back to stuff like that because I'm with you. These are my kinds of movies. I don't mind slow paced and methodical and movies that you have to. And I don't want to come across as like some because anytime you talk about movies, you talk about your opinions, you can come across as like this like it's not that I'm arrogant about it. I love a movie I have to pay attention to.
Yes.
I just went through and watched the entire MCU phases up to Endgame with my kids, and it was fun watching it with my kids because they don't have to pay attention a lot. They could just watch it. They see the exciting things. They can pick up on some things, but like if I ask them particular details, now of course they're 7, 8, and 12, but they may not know that, but it's fine. You don't need to know the details of the movie to enjoy the Avengers movies. You
Right.
can just watch them. You watch them in any order coming on. I would find myself, I would get down and scroll on Twitter just because I'm of habit. Look
Right.
up and be like, crap, I'm lost. Let me stop and go back because I don't know why I don't know why they're arguing now. I don't know what happened. Why is this lady suddenly trying to kill people? I'm just like, what's going on? But yeah, so I really enjoy a movie where I can like look at like my partner and be like, yeah, let's put our phones down and like let's get into this world for 2 3 hours and just kind of like let it just be what we do for the evening instead of let's have a movie on while we scroll Twitter, which is kind of what movies have become for me at home.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm totally with you. I mean, that isn't that to me, that's part of the fun of, watching a really good movie, reading a really good book, watching a really
Yeah,
good TV show. You get invested in that world and those characters, and you, like you said, you don't want it to end. The more the merrier, right? I
Yeah,
mean, you want to spend more time in that world.
it's getting really hard to genuinely just get lost in something now. And it's because we're so conditioned to have 4 or 5 things going on at once. I find myself watching movies and I'm on the IMDb looking up stuff about the trivia and the interesting like I'm just because I'm always having something going on. So with this movie, like literally I watched Blade Runner and I found myself doing it during Blade Runner. I was like, no, I've never even seen this movie. And I need to pay attention because I want to know what this world is about. I'm really intrigued. I love Ridley Scott. I don't like some of the things he says outside of directing, but I like Ridley Scott as a director. So let me watch this movie. I love 80s movies. I love the technology of the 80s movies. I love the sound. I love everything about it. And so I'm watching it. Then I get into Blade Runner 2049, and literally the first scene, I'm seeing Dave Bautista, who I personally love. Dave Bautista. I'm a pro wrestling fan, and I think he's just the best of the quote unquote wrestling guys who've become actors. I think he's the best. And I'm watching this scene, and I remember just thinking, I'm gonna put my phone over here. I'm not gonna touch it. I'm gonna sit down here for the next 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'm gonna watch this movie, and I did it, which feels like a small accomplishment, but I'm glad I did because I really, really enjoyed this movie.
Awesome. Well, I am proud of you for being
Yes,
able to do that.
it's really it's not as easy as it sounds. I know I want pats on the back. People also know my house is super busy. So to watch anything for 2 hours and 44 minutes with no distractions is an accomplishment itself in my house.